Welcome back to Serious Talk, the Military Minute, the show where we honor veterans and military spouses and translate military life into real, high-impact civilian careers, especially in the Salesforce ecosystem. I'm your host, Greg Banks, and thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. If you've spent any time around Salesforce on LinkedIn, today's guest is probably already on your radar, Karri Webster. But this conversation isn't just about Salesforce. It's about what happens when you're building a family through deployments, big moves, retirement timelines that don't go as planned, and you still decide it's time to bet on yourself. In this episode, you'll walk away with a practical starter kit for breaking into Salesforce as a military spouse or transitioning service member. How to use LinkedIn without pretending you're already an expert and still build real relationships. A smart path to experience when you don't have a job yet. Things like dev orgs, volunteering, and office hours. Certification prep that actually helps. Things like Trailhead, Focus on Force, and building, not just watching. Lastly, a mindset shift for seasons of life and how to make the next right step when you feel stuck. All right, let's get right into it. Karri Webster, welcome to Serious Talk, the Military Minute. Great to have you here today.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning.
Good. Well, for our audience, if you're on LinkedIn and you're anywhere around the Salesforce space, this person is no stranger to you. Karri's extremely, in fact, that's kind of how we met. She's no stranger in the LinkedIn space, just a real big advocate for the military families and the Salesforce organization. Just became really impressed with how she did LinkedIn, to be honest with you. But it led to some conversations during some fellowship stuff several years ago. And I really wanted to come on and tout some of your journey, Karri. Certainly want to pay honor to your family for the sacrifice y'all have made, not just you and your spouse, but other than the family we'll talk about. But thanks for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg.
Awesome. So before we get into any of the stuff about the military, at the end of the day, you're a person. You had a childhood. You had things before you chose or fell into that. I fell into the Salesforce space. Maybe you fell into the military space. We don't always have a lot of control in those days. But tell me a little bit about growing up, where you grew up, kind of how you found your way into the military world.
Okay. So I actually grew up in Puyallup, Washington. I can always tell when folks are not from there because they have no idea how to pronounce that. It's just south of Seattle. So I very much am I'm from the Northwest. I no longer live in the Northwest, but that is a huge part of who I am in terms of loving the outdoors. I woke up every morning. Mount Rainier was right outside my window. Definitely lived in Puyallup for most of my life, to include a good chunk of my husband's military service. So our story in that sense, and I know we'll get to that piece of it, was a little different because I was in my hometown for most of his career as well. But yeah, I grew up in Washington. Most of my family is still out there. But yeah, that's a big part of who I am.
Mount Rainier, for those who have not seen it in person, is a remarkable thing. I've seen it twice. The first time I saw it, I used to travel with NASCAR, believe it or not. We go into that later, but I was doing a race in Northern California, and that was my weekend job. I had a day job traveling around doing engineering work. And so we had some work up in that area of the country. So I flew from California up. I didn't make that way to the West Coast very often. Took a shuttle from the airport to the hotel. It was midnight, and opened the window the next morning, part of the curtains, and Mount Rainier was right outside my window. I was like, man, that's not what you normally see looking out of a hotel window. Absolutely gorgeous. I can totally understand your love for the outdoors in that part of the country.
Absolutely.
Cool. So did you meet, if y'all stayed out there during the first part of his career, I'm guessing y'all probably met in that area.
Yeah, we met at the time it was Fort Lewis. Since it's changed to Joint Base Lewis McChord. We met out there. I attended church, and he ended up coming with some friends out there. And so we met at church, and was not at all an initial, love at first sight or anything. That's a long story in there, but ultimately we became boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, all that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we met out there, dated for quite some time. And then he ended up getting orders to Fort Bragg. And that was, I went to college in Washington as well, in Bellingham, Western Washington University. And it was, I finished up college, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And so I did follow him. My parents' worst nightmare, probably, but it all worked out, and got my own little apartment. It was like my first time kind of spreading my wings post, college and all that stuff. So got my own little place in Fayetteville. I was actually doing radio advertising out there, sold radio advertising for a little bit, and, just was figuring out life outside of my parents' roof. And so that's kind of the picture of how things first started for us. his career, again, it just kind of went back and forth between Washington and Fort Bragg. I know it's not true for everybody, but we kind of feel like in the Army, at least, that all roads lead to Bragg. We kind of went back and forth between there a little bit. And then his family's in the Carolinas. So, we had our family out in the Northwest, or my family in the Northwest, and then his family in the Carolinas. So we're kind of unique in that area.
Yeah, I'm not sure who was probably ripped apart more, your mom or your dad, but when your kid leaves home, and there's not too many places further away you could have gone from Washington than that. But at least when they visit, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, if you've been to Mount Rainier, it's gorgeous. But if you've been to the Carolina coast, it's equally as beautiful. A lot of bugs, gorgeous place. Well, you need to write a book. I met my Ranger husband at church. That's got to be the #1 bestseller. I don't think I've ever heard that story. Really, really cool place. All right, good deal.
Yeah.
So he was already in the Army when you met.
Yes.
Right?
He literally signed up the day he turned 18. He's one of those rare people that know what they want to be. He wanted to be a GI Joe. That was his, he had that knowing what he wanted to do for most of his life. So he was already in the military when we met.
I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I remember G.I. Joe. Not as many toy options back then. Toy Story wasn't out. Good deal. Awesome. So you make your way out here. How long have you been out of Washington?
So because we had moved back for a bit. So I want to say we moved back to the Carolinas in 2017, I believe. Okay. So 2017, we were in Fayetteville. It might have been 2018. So we were in Fayetteville, and then he retired 2022. I'm giving you the full story. Retired 2022, but the kids and I came out to where we're at now, South Carolina, in 2021. So we all know that fun thing called COVID. Yeah. So that just his retirement process and all of that was in the middle of everything in that area. We did a little bit of the GeoBash stuff because he still had time that he needed to finish out. And I wanted to get our kids, we have 4 kids, wanted to get them all settled in school and life and, whatever was next for us. So, yeah.
I get that. And there's, reflecting on COVID, I hope they write books about maybe some honest books. I don't know if there's any honest books anymore, but I would love to have some honestly about how different states and areas of the country went about COVID. We're not terribly far apart. Georgia, a lot of people locked down hard that first 6 months, but
for sure,
we were told it was going to get better in the summer. Then when it got warm, whatever. Anyway, that's a whole nother episode. But anyway,
for sure.
If you've got little kids, they need to get outside, and that part of the world was pretty loose. You could still go do some stuff and go out to eat, things like that.
Interesting, because we are on the South Carolina side, but we are 15 minutes away from the North Carolina side. And so, you go to Target one place and it's one experience. You go to Target on the other side of the state line and it's different. But it was interesting for sure.
Looking back early on in that, and I don't know how many years you were married at this point or how long y'all had kids, but just as you look back on those first 10 years as a military spouse, did you grow up with the dream of marrying somebody in a uniform? Did you have expectations about that? Did they have a church group talking about marriage? Because a lot of times you wind up near a base, there's a culture change that happens because the military is such a prominent presence in certain towns.
For sure.
Some things early on you thought about.
I will say, even too, in terms of military towns, one thing I liked about Washington and where we were at is, yes, there was a military presence, but there was also a presence of anything and everything else. It was just part of that area. And even so, I grew up in Puyallup and the military presence was there, but it wasn't as prominent. So you go to Fayetteville and military is the life of Fayetteville.
It is the town, right? Yeah.
It is the town, which was really neat as well. And I can go into that a bit too. But my first 10 years, I was scared to step foot on base because military wasn't a part of my family. I had no inclination or no idea that I would, someday even date a military guy. And so it was very foreign to me. My dad is a general contractor, and so that was my world. And my mom, she, would kind of help out with the interior design type of stuff. At that time, wallpaper and paint colors and all that. And so just the military in itself was very foreign to me. I had no clue what to expect. And so getting into it, I right away just met a lot of other folks that I would today consider my military family. I have a lot of great friends that we've met that are all over the world now, right? So we're in a stage now where a lot of people are starting to retire. So we've got friends in Texas, we've got Chicago, like all over the US. And then we have friends that are still kind of stationed in Japan. Like they're just everywhere. So I guess that piece of it is definitely something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And even just meeting, I don't think I realized that even today when I meet other military spouses, it's like we have an instant bond because we know right away, like the types of things that we're either going through or went through. So it's just like this quiet, like, hey, I get you. We're BFFs now, even though I barely know your first name, but yeah, there's a lot we can relate to.
A really important part, and my best friend was a cop killed in the line of duty. I think when you think about any kind of civil servant or service member, there's a bond that goes when you do hard things. You can say the same thing about football team, not the same type of stuff, but like a football team, like they go to practice and they hurt and they play through injuries and they have wins and losses. There's something about doing life, doing hard things together that creates a bond. And whether that's because your husband's off fighting wars together and their wives are left behind, or wives are off in some cases fighting them, whatever that is, there's a bond to those people you're doing life with during that hard time.
Very much so.
In any variety. So it's always an interesting find especially somebody who married in and had no background. Your mom, your grandma wasn't a military spouse, so you didn't really have that to tie into, but you get baptized pretty quickly because generally that means you're plopped somewhere away from family and you find new family in that. So glad to hear you found that early on. That's good. What was the biggest surprise you think you found during that season?
I think just this instant sense of pride of what I was attached to. It was much bigger than myself, but I am proud to call myself a military spouse. And I'm very proud of that time and that opportunity that I had while he was in service, being able to support him and support other military spouses and do whatever, we could to celebrate our service members coming home and doing what we could to take care of each other, kids, all of those things. So it was just a time in life that I have a big sense of pride in. So I think that's definitely something that surprised me in that area.
That's probably my favorite thing. Like there's a purpose behind this podcast and it's really focused on the programs that help people on their way out so they can go, they can take all the training that the government gives you to make you soldiers. That's not always terribly useful or applicable as you get out, but we want to promote those programs, the ones that are working, and testify through telling stories like yours.
For sure.
But as much as I love the military and the older I've gotten, the more I like to learn history and whatnot, it still blows my mind. The largest volunteer army or military in the world, that we're still volunteer. There's still this pride, even when maybe you're serving and you don't like the leaders of the country. You don't believe in what they're saying. You don't even believe in the war, but you believe in duty. And there's something, the friends of mine that are police, the same kind of thing. I've got your six, I've got your back. When you go do hard things and you don't have to watch your back because the people around you are doing that for you. There's something in that. I don't know if that's a man thing or just a person thing, but as a man, like I know there's times in life where I had to watch my back, and it's just really hard to focus when you're busy looking behind you as in front of you. So good to hear. Is that season started coming down, like really crazy things in the world going on about the time he's talking about getting out, right?
Yeah.
You've got COVID. Yeah. Who knows how long this freaking thing's going to go on, what the world's going to look like coming out of it. Elections going on. Like there's a lot of change in the world during this time. So as a wife and a mom and as a military spouse, that's a whole new unknown chapter of what does life when he's not in the Army look like? Because your entire adult life has been, for lack of a better term, grounded in the security of that job, right?
Yeah, very much so.
A really, really boring way to water it down, but it's
true though.
So now everything in your life is opening up and unpacking. Was there any intentions around the timeliness of when he chose to get out, or it's time to retire? Our kids at that age, like there's a lot of things that go into making a decision like that. What led y'all there?
It's funny you say the timeliness of when he got out. So here's a little story in terms of the when and how he got out. He knew, well, a couple things in this. And we have 4 kids. So we've had these discussions many times over and over again about, okay, at what point in time are we kind of drawing the line in the sand so that our kids at minimum aren't having to move around and all that stuff, or at least be prone to whatever and wherever the military wants to put us. Like, we knew our marker was 9th grade. We're like, okay, we want their high school career essentially to be stabilized. They won't have to fear, moving high schools or any of that. And in I think it was 2019, late 2019, November to be exact, he kind of got word on the street from some of his peers that he was essentially going to be on the list for promotion, which is normally a great thing. But the military always has a carrot in front of you. And then there's always, X amount of years you need to commit to this so that this can happen, all of these things. And so we knew that this promotion would mean he would have to commit so many more years. More than likely, we would be moving to this place and all these things. So, and again, this was before all of the COVID stuff kicked off. So November, he got word on the street. November, he put his packet down. At that time, it was a 12-month time period that you should have to complete the retirement process. December 1st, his name was on the list. And then COVID. And in this case, he had, I guess the short story of it, with him declining this particular promotion, it would turn his 12 months into 6 months to get out. And so during this time, also, COVID kicks into gear and we're not getting a response or anything from leadership as to, okay, so are they going to honor the fact that he got his packet in on time, or does he have to get out in 6 months in the middle of all of this? So, and honestly, there were some other things in there too that made it kind of messy. It actually took him 2 full years to get out. And that can be a whole podcast in itself. But the timeliness of it was to stabilize our kids where they were at. And so that is part of the reason why the kids and I moved out to, even though he was still in, we knew, again, this was during COVID. And so we didn't want our kids to, once schools did open back up, some of them were starting into new schools. So they would have been there for like a year. And then we would have moved to where we were retiring. So the timeliness, that was to stabilize our kids. And then kids and I moving out earlier was to stabilize them and get them situated. So that was interesting. And then of course, throughout all of that, it's funny because the very first moms group type of thing I did out here was the day after the Afghanistan withdrawal. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Oh man. And it was my first interaction with in a group setting where none of these other moms were even familiar, right, with this whole military culture. And
am I allowed to say something bad or not? Right?
Yeah. Can I say?
Wow. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can I say anything? And on top of that, with what my husband did, he was in special operations, and so, we didn't know names exactly, but we knew very likely that some of his peers were out there taking care of stuff, and so, it was just I don't know, I was glued to the TV, just kind of keeping track of what I could. And normally if he was over there, I would just have had the TV off. I don't want to hear about anything from here, but it was just a crazy time. Right. And so, but in that, I wasn't necessarily able to relate too much to folks in my local area, but I still was able to just set up things right where I'm like, okay, what can I do to help out in this type of situation? So I knew that there was they had a welcome house in Fayetteville that they were setting up for a refugee family. So I just reached out to people within my network, whether they were military related or not, and started pulling in donations for just stuff to put the house together. So it was neat kind of seeing that stuff to come together, but it was also a little chaotic, but we were happy when stuff started to settle a bit.
I can't fathom. I mean, God knows marriage is hard enough, right? You throw military in, you throw deployment. I can't imagine special ops. You're trying to raise kids. You want to do it together. The one spouse is not there. They're deployed. The uncertainty of all of that. And then something tumultuous as Afghanistan withdrawal happens. And we don't have to get in the political side of right, wrong, or sloppy, whatever.
Yeah.
One thing I definitely want to highlight in this chapter of the podcast, though, some pretty dang awesome things happened when the government said we're not going to be responsible for Afghanistan anymore and did what they did. Some individuals rose up. And there's some really, really great stories out there. You and I've talked about Operation Pineapple Express. It's a really, really good story. Chad Robichaux tells some really good stories about what he personally did. And that, you don't think about these things like when you're a part of the military and they just tell you to go, you're going to be there, and what you need to do will be there.
For sure.
When you choose to do that as an individual and you're calling in favors and trying to raise funding and get gear and get across national borders into terrorist countries on your own, it's a whole different kind of crazy. And man, we should do another podcast on that. But anyway, we'll leave that there because that takes me in a wormhole that I may not come out of. All right. So on the way out of the military, on the way to settling on the East Coast, your kids are getting older. They're getting to that age where life is hard if everything's going good, but they're going to get ninth grade. They're talking, I don't know if they even call it this anymore, but you have guidance counselors talking about careers, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard season for teenage kids. Let's just leave it at that. You're going through all this at that time. Husband's on the way out. You're still like 2020-ish, 2021. We can all relate to the world, what's going on at that point. Career-wise, what are you doing? Like, I know you're doing stuff on base with moms and all that. What are you doing career-wise?
Yeah. So about that time is maybe a little earlier than 21 is when I started just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier on. I probably should have gone a little deeper into it, but I had a little dose of Salesforce experience back in 2007. And I worked as a marketing coordinator in the Seattle area for a company called Sesame Communications. But I knew ultimately that once we started having kids, I wanted to stay home with our kids. So I ended up, I was in that role for about a year, and then we had kids, and we had 4 kids very quickly. I stayed at home with our kids. So I was a stay-at-home mom. And then as my husband was starting to transition out of the military, that's when I just kind of started thinking through. I'm like, okay, what's next for me? What do I want to do? But also trying to find something flexible enough where I can still continue to make sure our kids were good to go and everything. And stability was the name of the game for us. So I just started looking back into the Salesforce world. I'm like, okay, what's going on in Salesforce? And I didn't know about Salesforce military at that point. So that was a welcome surprise to be like, oh, cool. Like there's all of these programs. And I know we mentioned programs earlier. So I just dove into whatever I could in terms of Salesforce military. And then anything on Trailhead, I just dove in. So Salesforce military, Trailhead, hiring our heroes. Right away, I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get into this program? So I did all the things I possibly could do that I at least knew of that were available to me in terms of Salesforce related things, and then also just marketing myself. My background is in business administration, but my emphasis was in marketing. And so at the end of the day, I knew the product I am now marketing is me, Karri Webster. Yeah. So there's a program out there called Talent Stacker Career Development Program. That one is a paid program, but I knew I was shifting gears. I knew that whatever I was doing was now an investment into myself. So I knew with that program, I wouldn't necessarily be getting this certification or whatever, but that helped me big time in terms of understanding how to use LinkedIn as a platform to market myself.
I was going to interject there because Talent Stacker is one I've heard of it. I've never heard anything about it. Can you articulate a little bit about what Talent Stacker does? What's their offering?
Yeah, absolutely. So Talent Stacker it's a career development program. So there are things in there that they have that help support trailblazers in the Salesforce space, but they also have modules that help trailblazers market themselves and get out there and understand how to use LinkedIn better, and not just LinkedIn, like other platforms as well. Personally, I was like, there's enough platforms out there. I'm just going to focus on one. So I did that.
What's the medium for it though? Is it online? Is it mentor based? Is it coached? How is it set up?
It's fair to say a little bit of all of that. So they have, I'm less involved with it now, but there were calls that we can get on they have mentorship programs. They have almost like live sessions like this with a group that are just, kind of, they had different things with it, whether it was regarding people that were trying to get their admin certification and they kind of wanted to walk through different scenarios together. They had different things. So they have a freelance program now, which is separate from their talent stacker, like the initial offering. So it's just a lot of great material, provides you even with assets that you can use to support whatever it is that you're learning and building. Kind of a big vague answer, but they have a little bit of everything. So
okay, good.
Yeah,
I've heard of them, but nobody has spoken to anybody yet that had used it. So hearing some details about what they offer is important. Good. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I used a lot of their stuff. So Hiring Your Heroes, see career development. I don't know. So Portraits for Patriots was big in terms of, getting that professional headshot. So I don't know all of the different things that are still available today, but Portraits for Patriots was a good one. It offered free headshots for both veterans and military spouses as they're transitioning out of the military. And then LinkedIn Premium, that was available then for, I believe it was like for a year or something like that. I have it today and I need to cancel it. I just, those subscriptions that you thought you canceled and then you look up and you're like, oh, I still have that. So that's one of those for me right now. But,
okay.
But even that, like the LinkedIn Premium, taking advantage of the fact that you can start to message people. Like you have so many more messages that you can reach out to folks, and people want to help transitioning service members and military spouses kind of getting back into things. So definitely worth looking at all of those different options there.
Yeah, we'll do a debrief after this and just get a full list of those programs. So look into the ones to make sure they're all still around. I mean, I know it wasn't that long ago, but fly by night, some come, some go. But we'll make sure they're there and we'll put a list of all those in the show notes. But that's really good to know. And Portraits for Patriots, like I don't think I've even heard of that one. Somebody in my algorithm says something about headshot because that's half of what my LinkedIn feed is now. I keep hiding it, but it keeps coming back. Little things that are the difference maker.
For sure.
I'm not saying that determines between the door being open or closed, but the shot of you out at the beach, like I see someone on LinkedIn going, they're not marketing themselves. They're just entertaining. But I mean, your perspective is probably pretty unique there that, really everything you're doing to prepare to go back into the workforce by definition is marketing. I've got to find a way to make the best light shined on whatever it is I know and can do. And you can go train, you can go take courses, you can go get coached, you can practice interviews, you can do all those things, but all that collectively is marketing yourself. An image is the first thing they see if you're doing it through LinkedIn. So I haven't even heard of them, but that's a great one to know about too. I'll see if they're still around. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So who opened the first door? Where'd you go?
Who opened the first door?
Yeah.
Let's see here. So I would honestly, and I didn't mention this earlier, but volunteering. So I volunteered with Military Trailblazer office hours actually for like 2 years. And that in itself, especially in today's ecosystem, it's a little bit different right now. When I was entering back into the Salesforce space, I think it was, I don't necessarily want to say easier, but I felt like the entry level types of roles were more available. Being in that volunteer role helped me right away have some credibility. It helped me start to build my reputation in terms of my work ethic, getting my stuff done, and even my own network, because, there were regular episodes for that one and they were live episodes. And so I was intentional with those too. So if we were in a live episode and there was somebody on there and they had some stuff they were saying that I thought was amazing, after the show, I would just send them a quick little LinkedIn message saying, hey, I was at this show. I really loved what you had to say about XYZ. Thank you so much for being generous with your time. Like, because these are folks that were volunteering their time.
Right.
I knew that they were in very busy spaces. And so I would say that was kind of my initial like Salesforce opportunity in there. I had some other, paid types of things as well, but I think that was a huge help for me getting my foot into the door and just showing myself as a credible Salesforce professional. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So I just recently started attending the Trailblazer office hours. In fact, it's starting in about 20 minutes. They're every Friday at noon Eastern. You can find them on LinkedIn and connect, and anybody can come. But the idea is that you're there to help, or what's he call them, an advisor. There's teachers and there's students, but sometimes the students are teaching the teachers. So it's a really good format. It's very laid back. The groups are not too big. Bill's actually agreed to come on here pretty soon, so I'm looking forward to that interview as well.
Yeah.
But, so you mentioned volunteering. Were you volunteering as a Salesforce admin somewhere and you were using office hours as a way to learn? Or were you in office hours, like taking the things and giving back, and that was just giving you experience and validating your knowledge?
The format's changed a bit over the years, but at that time I was their analytics manager. And so I was the one crunching the numbers in terms of, okay, we had X amount of people attend this one. These are our new attendees, that kind of thing. And so, and I don't know what they still track today, but that was specific to the sessions that David Scott Nava was putting on. And so, but yeah, I would do those. And then I monthly would put together kind of like a snapshot and post that. So that was part of their own marketing and image stuff as well. So yeah, it was fun.
That's a different way of coming into it.
Yeah,
all right. So
absolutely.
We don't have to go down this rabbit trail. And every one of these, we're obviously talking a lot around the Salesforce space, people making their way to tech. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
People have this imposter syndrome. That's a season, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 6 years. Depends on where you work, like what opportunities you're afforded there and what you're responsible for. Sometimes you just kind of trip, like I did. I fell in and I was an admin for a 500 user org right out of the gate. I didn't even know what the acronyms were. I didn't know what clouds were. Baptism by fire is what they call it in my part of the country. But you learn fast, right? And Trailhead was a game changer when I think in 2007, you said when you came around, when I got in 2010, that just didn't exist. Like there were old Dreamforce sessions on YouTube, but communities didn't exist. Trailhead didn't exist. Trailblazer, I don't think was a word that was in the community yet.
No YouTube. No.
It's almost cultish. I tell people all the time, like it's the weirdest. Trailblazers and MVPs in the Salesforce space are the weirdest collection of unicorns I've ever met. I'll never forget the first year they had an admin keynote, Steve Mo, hashtag you owe me a beer. If you've seen him in the ecosystem, that's his tagline. They called him up on stage, and I may be misremembering this number, but they had like a 6-foot plastic lightning bolt they gave him. The whole camping phenom around Trailhead that was all new at that time.
Yeah.
But they pulled him on stage and they called him out as like the whatever his title was that year. They recognized him. I think he had answered like 89,000 questions in the community. I'm like, what the freak do you do during the day that you've got time to do that? But he's the tip of the spear, but he represents thousands. And I'm not exaggerating, thousands of people like me and you, just out doing a day job. But in addition to that, they're out there giving back. And it is a really, really, it's like saying I've got a bunch of lawyers on retainer, but they decided to do everything pro bono for anybody who called them. I'm like, it's the weirdest thing in consulting space for that to exist, but it's a really, really cool phenom that Salesforce has had their ebbs and flows of good and bad years. That's one constant that we've seen since that era around 2011. Really, I think changed everything for the better. Communities, hands down, I think is the best thing they've done in 15 years.
Agreed.
Creating a place where you and I can connect, and I can help you, you can help me, kind of a thing. It's really unusual, but really rewarding.
For sure.
As you look back, I think you'd listed Salesforce, military, Trailhead, Trailblazer community, mentors, Talent Stacker. Focus on Force, one I don't think we've talked about on the show yet. Pretty good one.
We haven't talked about that one. That's a must.
Tell us a little bit about that one.
I would say, especially when you're, studying for certifications and stuff, that's the number one reason that I use Focus on Force, just to go through and validate what I've been learning and to see how close to ready or how not close to ready I am to actually sit down and take a certification. Yeah, that's a staple item when it's cert time, when it's time to buckle down and get some certifications in there. Absolutely.
So for those that are at the starting line of coming into this ecosystem, the magic is certifications. The way to prepare for certifications is Trailhead, but Trailhead won't help you pass certification. It won't guarantee you pass certifications, particularly when you get past, like, say, admin. You get into some of the specialty things that you've got to look outside of that. So focus on forces. And I think Salesforce Bend does some of these. There's a handful of organizations out there that have practice exams that kind of measure.
For sure.
You're paying every time you take it, whether you pass or not. So it's a really, really good one to call out. And we'll put a link to that as well.
Just with that, and like if your goal is, passing these certifications and that kind of stuff, even if you don't have any opportunities for real life experience, just getting into a dev org and building and breaking things. So I would create my own user stories or requirements or scenarios, and then just go into a dev org and build. So that alone gives you a lot of your real life experience, which is also incredibly helpful in terms of certifications, because you start to see and understand why you do something a certain way.
Hashtag embrace your inner nerd. Yeah. Writing user stories. I don't think I've heard anybody say they wrote their own user stories for their own dev org either. Steve Mo dropped into, this is not an episode about him, but he showed up at Trailblazer office hours last week. I didn't know he came to those things. It was the first time I'd seen him there.
That's awesome.
And the guy's just remarkable. His people who do hard stuff and make it fun. He did an admin keynote that year at Dreamforce, and he called it the fall release. And first thing in the release notes was we're going to delete multi-select pick lists. They should not exist. Get rid of them. He's always known for like check syntax on formulas. Like, nobody's ever been hurt by clicking this button. It's okay. Just click it. Make sure everything's right. He's got really good, solid disciplines. But to your point, if I can write my own user story, it's going to make me think about the client and the consultant. It's going to make me think about the underlying problem and what that really means in terms of development. And in terms of the space, like, not everybody that goes in winds up becoming a consultant. But the sooner you learn to think that way, even if you're an admin for a company and they've got 10 users, like that's the finite world you live in, they're still your customer. And thinking about them that way it's a skill you have to learn. Not many people are born with that. Just learning to listen a certain way. I had the first 11 years I did this, I was in a company and overseeing an org, and I had the letters DTR on a plaque or just a piece of paper over my shoulder. And it was a conversation piece. Stands for define the requirement. And I had I had users all over the world. We have 15,000 employees, but I had users all over the world. But I had what I called super users. And I met with these people once a month for 90 minutes. I would spend about 20 minutes talking about things that are coming that I know about. I would give them 20 minutes to tell me about things coming from them, because we had like 11 business units and there's no way for me to keep up. There's not enough news posts in the world to tell me. So they would bring me news that would impact me. And then we would spend 20 minutes training them on something. And I did them. There were some of them that were there for 11 or 12 years. I had the same people coming every month. And it was a cool culture, but inevitably people get promoted, people leave the company, whatever. But a new super user would come in. They wouldn't say a word for 3 or 4 months. And then the first time they do, and I'm not going to, it's not a dumb question. I'll say ignorant. Ignorant is uninformed. It's not unintelligent. They would come in and go, I want a new field for this. And I go, really? Yeah. Who's going to use it? What's it for? Are you going to report on it? Is there an automation behind it? What are you trying to do with it? Especially if it was a text field. Like, text is the most useless thing in the world. And they would just kind of, and I said, see those 3 letters? All right, everybody, come off mute. What does DTR stand for? Define the requirement. You have to teach your users to think that way.
Yeah. For sure.
It was a cool season in my life where I had time to build rapport with people in all cultures. We were global, so we had Australians and Singapore and Japan and China. There were people all over the world in these calls who had a variety of backgrounds, but it was a cool place to build trust. Yeah. And I think people like Steve Mo represent that really well. Yeah. There's a finish line and we're all aiming at it, but we just see different ways to get there. So let's work through that.
Yeah.
You have a statement here in the notes about LinkedIn in particular. I started out by saying I was just impressed with how the presence you built for you. I had no idea who you were. You had a little flag next to your name, like, all right, Patriot, cool, check. Building meaningful professional relationships. And I've heard different people talk about LinkedIn a different way. Or all different ways. 90 seconds. You're teaching a class on how somebody could use LinkedIn to do what you did, and they don't have a marketing background. How do you summarize that?
Grow with me, right? So you don't have to put yourself out there as somebody that has it all right now, but you can build your story and be open about where you are at today, and also give them a glimpse into where you want to go. And the only way that you can do that is by sharing little glimpses and pieces of who you are today, what you're doing today to get to where you want to be tomorrow. So again, that takes a little bit of bravery and courage to put yourself out there as an unpolished person, human being. And the cool thing with that is that you start to build those relationships because they see where you're at today. So there's some folks that already know that, hey, I know how to do this. And just somewhere, somehow you kind of connect with people. But absolutely just put yourself out there as who you are today and show people where you're going. I think that was a big part of how I have used LinkedIn. It's shifted now. Now I think I just sometimes I share things so that I can go back and see them again when it comes to Salesforce and maybe a way somebody solved something. But it's a platform to show how we've all grown. So but yeah, I've built a lot of great relationships off of that piece right there.
Yeah, I think there's one part of that, and maybe you've said it and I missed it here, so if I did, forgive me, but you talked a lot about the things that I would say about me or what I'm trying to do and where I'm at. But the other thing that I saw you do, and this is what impressed me, and it's what impressed me about Steve Moe, is you engaged. If somebody else did that, because I don't know you from Adam, Sally, or Sue. What do I care about where you are or where you're going? But when we start engaging, right, you have no earthly reason in the world to help me do something. That's what Salesforce Communities did. Is what Steve Mullis does. You get out there. I'll have to tag him in this episode. I don't think I've ever said this name. But when you get out there and help people.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's, again, one of the underlying things behind the organizations that help vets and mil spouses that I just love and I want to promote is there's something selfless about it. I think it's what you find in a culture of other military spouses. You're selfless.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to help me, but if I don't know what else to do, I'll help you. You're going through something. Your husband just left for the first deployment or whatever.
Absolutely.
There's something about that type of sacrifice and service. And it's innate in our military families, which is where my passion comes from. Like, we just completely take for granted that I get up, go to work, and come home, and there's not bombs coming in here because people like you and your spouse have gone and done hard things. Yeah. But that exists in its own way in things like LinkedIn, in Salesforce Communities. So it's a really powerful way when you just know a little, just do a little.
Yeah.
I don't have a job yet. Great. You've got a lot of time to do LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Get involved with
that's your
office
job.
Hours and stuff. Absolutely. That is your job. And I don't think people say it that way. So when I say marketing, like, I've done a lot of things in my career. Marketing is one that makes me cringe. Like, I just don't understand marketing people, generally speaking. But at the end of the day, we're all doing some of that a little bit. If you have a LinkedIn profile, you're by definition a marketer. If you've got a Facebook profile, a TikTok account, whatever, you're creating a legacy of some kind, intentional or not.
Absolutely.
Even if you're in there doing nothing but liking, if you never post anything. If you're just liking things, you're building a profile. Then algorithm somewhere is learning about you because of the activities you have. So it's an important thing. I just don't want to overlook the simple things there.
Very much
so. The last
so.
thing you mentioned was the book Habits.
Yes.
Never heard
of that book.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so the book Habits, it's been a while since I've read it. I would say it's like one of those books I revisit annually. And there's just little steps and cues in there that I don't think I would have thought about in terms of building habits without reading that book. So one example, some of them are just like the rhythm you do things. So I have not being active, right? Like just walking. So for a while, my husband and I, we had this habit, like we would do our coffee in the morning, maybe something small to eat. And then at that time, this was during COVID, I just go on a walk for however long. And I knew that my shake came after that. So that was like my rhythm, right? I had, these are the 3 things I do, and this is the order I do them. And so I knew that this didn't come until this happened. So, or something might be doing something you like while you're doing something that you don't like, right? So maybe I know I have to do this certain thing every day, but while I'm doing that, that's when I can have my coffee or, something else that is just part of your day. So that is a very generic and short way of explaining some of the things that I got out of the book. But any of this stuff that we're doing is, especially in the Salesforce space, you have to build some good habits.
Right.
And I think that was helpful. And I will say too, during the earlier part of my Salesforce world, I built a habit of studying in the morning, like early in the morning, very early in the morning. But I also saw that as a time that I was investing into myself. That was the name of the game at that point. Carrie's making investments into herself in the mornings. So that was just part of my routine. So, yep.
We've got a reservist on staff here who, while he was deployed, found like the only extra time he could find was to get up at 4 o'clock. And he actually
Yep.
got a certification while he was deployed overseas just by getting
Good
up
on
at 4
him.
every day. Yeah. And you're the second
Yeah.
person in 3 days that I've heard say this statement. It was a psychologist I heard talking on another podcast about the study of the benefit of having early morning habits is so important for our brain. If your brain wakes up and knows, first things first, coffee,
Yep.
coffee, exercise, food, meditation, whatever. There's something about regular rhythm of morning habits that actually does things in our brain that makes us more effective. Like you wake me up in the morning and tell me to go study, forget about it. I can't study first thing. That's not something I can do.
I love it.
Not reading, studying. I can consume podcasts. I can listen to things. I'm an auditory learner. I don't learn by reading, but there's so much that goes into that. And again, I think so many people just wake up, they look at the day, and it's the spans of I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything about this. You get the same number of seconds in your day that I do. And if you don't have a job, you actually have more. So build habits, right? Sit down and write a list, be intentional, and you can change the list over time, right? Some habits prove to be useful. Some not. Eating donuts every morning may not be the best habit to build. But yeah, there's a lot to be said there, and really good call out.
I have to tell you something kind of funny about the habits space. So the show Jersey Shore, like from ever ago, and he had a GTL. So that was like his little routine. It was gym, tan, laundry. Like that was his thing. And when my kids were little, I would have my own GTL, but it was gym, Target, laundry. So I would joke around. I'm like, gym, Target, laundry today, GTL. So, but still, like, cool. It's the same idea, just having these little systems in place to get stuff done that we need to get done.
Yeah, definitely the first time Jersey Shore has been mentioned on here. Maybe the first time Target was mentioned too. I'm not sure. Cool. So you've got you're doing the office hour stuff. You find your way into your first employee. Big girl hat. Salesforce job.
Big girl hat. Yeah.
Big girl hat.
Yeah.
Tell me what that's like. What was getting into that experience like, and how has that changed from now to today?
For sure. So my first real big role, I was with a large consulting firm, and I will never take that for granted because I know how difficult it could be to get into some of those larger companies. But I was also very grateful for that experience because it showed me just kind of their own systems. I had a lot of training and certifications available to me that were not necessarily just Salesforce, but learning how to agile, learning how to deliver in agile teams, that type of thing. So it was great. It was a 12-week academy type of program. Again, I don't know how many of those are out there today, but I was able to be part of that. And I made it a priority to figure out how I can be helpful to other people that were in this space already, that were already on projects. So that was a huge priority for me. I don't know that I thought of it that way at that time. I think I just kind of wanted to be in their space and understand what it is that they're busy with every day and figure out how I can take a couple things off of their plate. So, but yeah, it was really neat. One of my first official projects there, they were just trying to figure out a place to put me, really. And a lot of the others that were in our cohort. And so my assignment was doing a user guide. It wasn't something that was part of the contract deliverables or anything like that. And I pretty much knew that nobody was ever going to look at it, but I wanted to make it the best user guide that ever existed. I feel like just that mindset that I had with that automatically showed my work ethic to senior leaders. And right away, I feel like I was able to at least gain credibility in that space. And so just that mindset has gone with me ever since then. So, if you are newer to the Salesforce space, just know whatever projects you're on or whatever types of things you're doing kind of comes back to that marketing thing, right? We're building our own reputation inside of this space. And then other opportunities start to build from that stuff right there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to sidebar and say, hey, you're going to come back and we're doing a whole nother episode on documentation because it's hands down the worst job in a project because it's always the thing you do last. It's always when the budget's almost gone. At that point, the users are involved and they're changing their mind about stuff, which means I wrote it down, so I jinxed it. They're going to change it. I got to go get new screenshots. Just a side of hell that most people don't want to go live in, but you saw that as an opportunity. And I think in today's world, these letters AI, I have so many emotions about it. Most of them are not good, But one thing I love about AI is like I can literally, and I do this all the time. If I've got something to work on that's just daunting, I'll open Word and hit dictate, and I'll just talk to myself for 30 minutes. And then I'll take it and I'll shove it to AI and go, break this down into a summary, to-do actions, follow-ups, whatever. And its ability to take all the emotion out and just spit out facts, if you ground it right, are really, really important. But man, what a lesson. What a lesson. I hear this particularly of fellows that came through Hiring Our Heroes here. We had a lot of them that when you don't know what to do what you know, right? If I can sit down and write something, A, I'm having to learn in order to write it. B, I'm bringing value. I'm doing a job that somebody else probably doesn't want to do. C, it's actually one of the more memorable things the client's going to walk away with, because they're going to forget what you said in a training session or a discovery session or even a demo. But what's left after all the dust settles is that document. And as much as nobody wants to look at 112 page PowerPoint, sometime that's the go-to. That's the encyclopedia of this day to go back where it was. So your ability to make an impact is incredible. And to your point, it really just came down to a choice that you wanted to treat it that way. It wasn't an assignment. Right.
Very much so.
Good stuff.
And even with that, part of when I was doing my business degree and all that stuff, I learned how to write in a business, just emails and put the important stuff first and then all the other stuff here. So like our architects and that type of thing, I would help just kind of document some of the stuff they're trying to get out there. Or, if we had to document the root cause of something, like it's never fun. Right. Well, there's some fun going in and doing like root cause analysis types of stuff. But I was able to, tackle like, okay, how do I document this in a way that's going to be easier for other folks that are reading this and they don't feel like they have to go through the 120 pages. Like they can just see what there is, like a little summary up front. So, but AI is definitely incredibly helpful with that type of stuff today.
No doubt. No doubt. As you look back, I'm trying to do math while I'm talking and I'm not really good at that. I mean, you've been around the ecosystem for 18 years, 07 to now.
Ish, yeah.
Obviously took a big break in the middle of that to do some other things like raise a family and move across the country. Looking back on that, I always like to try to wrap these things up with just for some advice for people. Maybe you got a niece or a neighbor who's got a daughter who's looking to maybe marry a soldier, or maybe you've got a military spouse. They've already done that, for better or for worse. And they're going, I don't know what to do. I heard about Salesforce. Hey, Karri said something about that. What's your advice?
Yeah.
Like, how do you find out if it's something you like? And if so, where would you recommend somebody starts?
For sure. So even just using like the Salesforce stuff, let's just say we take that out altogether and you're somebody kind of re-entering things. At that point, it's just a matter of finding out what is there and what's available and what is kind of aligned with your current skill set, your current interests, those types of things. And then taking whatever that is, finding out all of the different things available to you, and then just slowly kind of building inside of that area. So, but yeah, in terms of the Salesforce, like if Salesforce is the thing for you, kind of your first steps in there, again, like just being connected in this getting set up with Salesforce Military, getting into Trailhead, learning, building, and then just building that network in LinkedIn. And so I would say that's your starting point, right? But yeah, it's
the Karri Webster starter kit.
That's what I would say.
Heard it here first, right?
the Karri Webster starter kit. I love it.
Awesome. Good deal.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's look outside of work a little bit. You've had some ebbs and flows over the last couple of decades of leaving home, going across country, COVID, not so fun times in the military with what that meant personally to your family as decisions are being made. You mentioned a few of these things, but like outside of work, like the work-life balance, God, that's probably half of a library if you go into it these days. How do you figure this out? I don't know if anybody does it great, but there are people who would do better than others. Some of that may be a way to unload the stuff that happens during your day. If you have a really stressful job, I got to find a way to unpack that. Maybe that's jujitsu. Maybe it's a punching bag. Maybe it's a long walk. Maybe it's a glass of wine, whatever those things are. It's really, really important that you don't just go home and sit down and let that stuff fester. So how do as you think about these different seasons and where you're at today, wiser, where do you stand on that? How have you found ways to deal with, like, if you're in a really big consultancy, I don't care how good the job is or the company is, like, that's stress. It's just a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. How have you dealt with that?
Today, I think I know more about what I want and I know how to communicate that. So I'm not in a giant consultancy right now. I'm in a smaller consultancy, but still being able to communicate those types of things is useful, whether you're in a small consultancy, a large consultancy, or you're an internal admin. Being able to communicate that stuff up front is incredibly useful. And even let's just say that you're on an internal team and you're feeling the stress. Sometimes leadership doesn't realize that things are under resourced, or so sometimes it's just a matter of us communicating with those around us what it is that we need to make this thing go smoother, or even just communicating expectations around, okay, this is what I am capable of doing between this today and 2 weeks from now. So sometimes we put ourselves in these big stressful situations too, thinking that, okay, I guess I'm supposed to do all these things. But just knowing what you want or need sometimes and communicating that is helpful. It's not the answer because it's not the only answer, because even if you communicate those things doesn't always mean that you're going to get the additional resources you need or whatever. It's definitely part of the solution. Right. I think I can say it that way. But
I am certain there are books on that. But man, the life lessons, right? Things come flat. I have my own flashbacks. Yeah. You know, when you say I know what I want, which could be 10 episodes, and I know how to communicate that to people, like that's not a book you read. You can read a book on how getting to that place is, but how to communicate that is as much about you and your personality, who you're communicating it to and their personality, the culture of the environment you're in. Is it remote? Is it office? Is it small? Is it big? Is it consultancy where there's money and budgets and timelines and all these other outside factors? There's a lot that goes into that. And I won't ask you how you learned it, because we could stay there forever. But I don't want to look past that, because it's I'm not going to say it's an easy thing to say. It's a harder thing to do. It's not that it's hard to do it, is you have to be intentional about it, right? I talk a lot on here about choosing. You chose to make the documentation an important thing. You chose to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn investing in other people. You chose to go help other people at different seasons. You chose to go, I'm going to leave my spouse now while he's figuring out the paperwork. I'm going to go do what's right for my family, because I can see there's value down the road that we're going towards, but I've got to go do this. You made some intentional choices, and those are all the things in the world that make a difference. And so many people just absolutely gridlock. They look and all they can see is the impossibility of what's in front of them, and they don't know how to choose. And that's, man, good stuff. All right. Go ahead.
Can I say just one last thing with that? I think sometimes when we don't know how to choose, it's up to us to just pick the next best thing. Like, we don't necessarily know if it's gonna be perfect or anything like that, but just taking a little step towards something. The gridlock can be real, but just taking a little tiny step towards something is useful.
Yeah. 1,000 bumper stickers come to mind. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Where does the road on 1,000 miles go? One step. Right. Yeah. There's something about that. Just move forward. Right. So the next best thing, the next right thing, whatever that looks like for you. Yeah. All right. Last question. 2025 was a really weird year. I mean, AI came out. A lot of big things changed over the last year. Set aside the culture of America.
Yeah.
What's the most important thing you learned over the last year?
I think this last year, a big thing for me was just taking part in the seasons of life you're in, right? For our family, we had this tiny little pocket of time where my husband still wasn't in his next big career yet, post-military, but we also knew that was coming. On top of that, our kids are now like high school, middle school, so we're in this little pocket of time where we're all still under the same roof. And so we just decided it, and it was kind of a spur of the moment type of thing, to take the entire summer. And part of our bucket list is to travel the entire US. So we knew when we moved to the Carolinas, we did the trip from Washington State. We went down the West Coast and then down the bottom part of the US to the Carolinas. But since we didn't move back, we had never done the northern part. And so this season for us was a time to just pause and take everything and kind of wrap up as much as we could for that little piece of our bucket list, because we knew life was going to be changing once he started his thing. And so, but yeah, just recognizing the season that you're in, I think is a really important thing whether it's a little pocket in time you have as a family or the season that you might be in where it is more like career focused or whatever. But yeah, grasping the seasons is definitely a big deal to me.
I love examples of what it looks like when it's done right. I admire what your family's done in terms of your sacrifice and where you started and prioritizing doing the right thing for your kids, whatever that means. I think military families are faced with that all the time. And if you just wait till it's right in front of you, then the hardness of that gets so much more. But to your advice, just do the next right thing so you don't wind up in that place. Have a plan, make a choice, be intentional. Just so many great lessons. Again, we'll go back and recap all of the many resources that Karri mentioned here. We'll validate that they're all still around and list them. But the short of it is, I think a really important takeaway, it's not just one. Right. There's no silver bullet out there. If you want to get to that next season, if you want to navigate that next chapter, it might mean 3, 4, 5, 6 things that you're doing. It's not taking three college degrees. It might be signing up with these 3 things and spending a little bit of time every day, intentional morning habits. A lot to be learned here. We need to write a book. But I really appreciate you taking the time to break that down. I thank you for the difference you make in this ecosystem. You're an example of the kind of person that I think makes being in tech, being involved with Salesforce, an encouraging place to go do life. So thank you for what you have done and are doing. God bless your family, and hope your husband enjoys his retirement, whether y'all stay here or find your way back to the Northwest or not. But thanks for the time today, Karri. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. I really appreciate the opportunity.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Serious Talk, the Military Minute. A huge thank you to Karri Webster for sharing her story so honestly, especially the real-life side of transition, stabilizing kids, navigating uncertainty, and choosing the next right step, even when the path isn't clear. If this episode helped you, here's your mission. Follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Leave us a review. It takes just a minute, but it helps the show reach more military families. And please share this episode with a military spouse or veteran who's trying to find their lane in civilian life, especially someone curious about Salesforce or tech. And to every veteran and military spouse listening, thank you. Your service, your sacrifice, and the invisible work you do behind the scenes matters more than most people will ever understand. Don't forget, links and resources mentioned today are in the show notes, including recommended programs and tools that we discussed. One more special thank you goes out to Jason Fowler for allowing us to use his song, Mystery Road. I'm Greg Banks, signing off. We'll see you at the next briefing.